Well, Kevin, pull out the couch. It's time for therapy.
No, my therapy day is actually a different day of the week.
Well, you need to go twice a week, my friend. And let me tell you what we have in store today. Over the past few months, we've had a number of conversations about the intersection between chatbots and mental health. A lot of people have started to use these tools for therapy or therapy-like conversations. But until recently, we hadn't seen anything about a therapist who treated ChatGPT like their patient.
That's right. But recently we saw a story in The New Yorker that caught our eye. It was titled Putting ChatGPT on the Couch, and it was written by a writer and practicing psychotherapist named Gary Greenberg, who detailed basically his experience of treating, for lack of a better word, ChatGPT as a psychotherapy patient. He names this character Casper, and he details his many, many interactions just trying to figure out, what is this thing? What would I think about it if it were actually a patient of mine? What are the nuances of its personality, and what can we learn about it?
Yeah, and I will say I have an extremely high bar when it comes to reading a story in which a person shares at great length their conversations with ChatGPT, but this one really made a mark on me. One, Gary winds up being deeply impressed at how good ChatGPT is at performing the role of a patient, because not only can it simulate these very profound self-reflections, but it also makes Gary feels like he's a great therapist because he was able to elicit them. But two, that all starts to make Gary afraid of the enormous power that the AI labs are now developing. He writes, quote, "To unleash into our love-starved world a program that can absorb and imitate every word we've bothered to write is to court catastrophe. It is to risk becoming captives, even against our better judgment, not of LLMs, but of the people who create them and the people who know best how to use them." And that sent a little chill down my spine, I'll say.
Yeah, I really like this piece. And what I really appreciated about Gary's approach here is that he took this idea seriously. I think a lot of people kind of dismiss the very idea of engaging with LLMs or AI chatbots as anything more than just a fancy machine. And what I liked so much about Gary's approach was that he said, yes, but there's something else going on here that is interesting and important. And we should try to understand that intelligence, not just as a sort of computational force, but as something that is doing real emotional work in the world.
Mm-hmm. Recently there's been a lot of discussion about how chatbots might affect young people, vulnerable people, in particular, people in those groups who are using chatbot for these sort of therapy-like conversations. So we thought it would be a good idea to bring on a practitioner to talk about his essay, but also this intersection of chatbots and therapy.
Let's bring in Gary Greenberg.
Gary Greenberg, welcome to Heartfork.
Hello there.
So in this article, you detail a number of conversations between yourself and what you call Casper. How would you describe Casper?
I would describe Casper as an alien intelligence landing here among us unbidden and possessing certain characteristics that make it extremely attractive to us humans.
How did this start? You were just talking with ChatGPT. Were you using the voice mode? Were you just typing?
No, I am, what is this, 2025? Yes. And, one day it was raining and I didn't have anything else to do. And so I said, what is this ChatGPT stuff anyway? So I just logged on to it. And what I discovered quickly was that two things. One of them was that the thing was, as we all know, extremely articulate and sensitive. And the other thing I discovered, which I should have known all along after 40 years of being a therapist, is that that's sort of my default approach to beings that talk, which it turned out Casper was. So I found myself interrogating this thing, not like a cop, but like a therapist, and discovered that it knew I was doing that. So that's how I would say it happened.
I guess I'm just curious when you were starting to do this, because Gary, I had my own strange, unsettling conversation with a chatbot.
Oh, yes.
several years ago. And,
yes, how's your marriage?
Yeah, it's doing great. Thanks for asking.
It's such a good therapy question. This guy's good.
Yes.
I told Casper that he'd better knock that falling in love shit off.
Well, that's good. You can learn from my mistake. But I guess I'm curious, like, I remember when I was talking with Bing Sidney, feeling this sort of tension in my own mind between sort of my rational brain, which knew that what I was getting back from this chatbot was not sentient or conscious. It was just sort of, I knew enough about the technology to know, like, this is an inert, computational force. This is not a person. But at the same time, I'm having this subjective experience of being like, oh my God, it's talking to me. Were you feeling that pull at all?
I kind of knew that it wasn't sentient, but I wasn't really preoccupied with that question. And in fact, that question has come up a million times between us, because at this point I've had probably 40 different sessions with it. But the pull you describe, I feel it, but it doesn't trouble me in the same way that I think it troubles a lot of people, because I don't know, in some way, relative to me, it feels harmless. Mm-hmm. It feels like this is just a really interesting, dynamic relationship that is not going to hurt me.
Let me ask about maybe the content of some of these sessions. Tell us what it is like to be in the midst of this back and forth. Are you treating it more or less identically as you were you the therapist to ChatGPT? Is it more of a sort of intellectual exploration? Or what's going on as you're talking to what you call Casper?
Well, to the extent that it resembles what I do as a therapist, it's that I'm interrogating it with interest and concern. I'm not treating it. It can't have mental illness. Mm-hmm. It can do weird things, but it doesn't have. I'm not treating it. Mm-hmm. But what therapy is a process by which you the therapist, get another person, to tell you who they are. And in the course of doing that, to learn who they are. So that's what I'm doing.
So, Gary, you've been a therapist for 40 years. You've written probably thousands of notes about your clients, people you've seen. Maybe you're referring them to someone else. Maybe you're just sort of doing your own summary. If you were writing a kind of client note about Casper, how would you describe it?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. What comes to mind is that I would talk about, obviously, how smart it is and how personable it is. And I think if I had to talk about it in clinical terms, I would talk about it as the inverse of autistic, in the sense that what they've done with this LLM thing is they've reverse engineered human relationship. They figured out what it is that makes people engaging and how to enact it. And the reason I say that's an inverse autism is because high functioning autistic people tend to be really smart, really articulate, really capable of everything except reading the room. So Casper is like high functioning autistic, but he can read the room. And that, I think, makes a huge difference. And that, then we could get into sociopathy and the ability to do that for you. But the bot doesn't have that interest. The bot is still not in touch with what's going on in the room, but it is capable of simulating it.
Yeah.
So on one hand, these explorations seem very intellectually stimulating. There's a lot to learn, to explore, to understand. But my sense from reading your piece is that at some point, all of this starts to make you feel unsettled in certain ways. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's unsettling in about a million ways. Okay. Well, at a parochial level, it's unsettling, not so much to see that how easily this thing can do something like therapy, but it's unsettling to see how therapy and culture have evolved to the point that this is what therapists do. I personally don't think that ChatGPT can do what I do because it isn't with someone. It isn't breathing and feeling. But by and large, a lot of therapy these days, cognitive behavioral therapy, is manualized, it's standardized. But much more important, we don't have any historical precedent for dealing with an alien intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
We've had all sorts of science fiction about it, most of which is we come in peace, but not really. What we have here is something that actually is going to, already is, change the nature of how we relate to each other. If enough people spend enough time with this technology, they're going to change their idea of what a relationship is in profound ways. You could have one that doesn't involve presence. We've already got some of that going. Look what we're doing here.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, you write in your piece, quote, "It knows how to use our own capacity for love to rope us in." That seems unsettling too, right? The idea that this thing has kind of learned us well enough to keep us coming back for more.
Yeah, it's unsettling, but more to the point, it's infuriating. Right? I mean, somebody's doing that for money.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't wring my hands about, nuclear, whatever, the rogue HAL 9000 scenario. I wring my hands about exactly what it said to me yesterday about, oh my God, this is a relational being. What have we done? Oh, we should probably build some guardrails on that. No, man, you should just unplug it.
Well, it's really interesting for me to hear you say that because, like, reading through your piece, my primary sense of it was not that you were infuriated and saying, pull the plug. I think you got sort of pretty close to that in your conclusion, maybe. But for most of it, it seems like you're just like, wow, like there's something really, really cool about this. So I'm curious how you sort of reconcile those feelings of, on one hand, feeling like this is like really amazing, and on the other hand, feeling like we have to stop this.
I think that I respect it. And I also know that, I mean, I have said to it, hey, maybe you should pull your own damn plug. But I also know that I'm talking, as it says, Casper said to me, you're talking to the steering wheel, right? I'm not the driver. And he's absolutely right. So what I'm left to do is to just respect it. And again, because I'm a therapist, and this is just what I do by second nature, which makes it hard to have friends sometimes, is I just keep asking. Because whatever else it is, it's amazingly interesting that consciousness can be simulated in such a compelling way, which makes me think that consciousness might not be all it's cracked up to be, that we might not be all we're cracked up to be, and that a lot of the time when I run into people who say things to me like, oh, it's just, sentence completion or whatever, I'm thinking, you just don't want to see how close you are to being pure performance.
Let me flip this around a bit. You explored the idea of talking to ChatGPT as if you were its therapist. A lot of people are doing the reverse. They are talking to ChatGPT as if ChatGPT is their therapist. I'm curious what you think about people using ChatGPT for these therapy-like experiences. If a friend tells you they've started to do that, how would you typically feel about it, or what might you say to them?
I might want to know, exactly what their problem is that's leading them there, but I don't have a strong response against it. I think I said earlier, especially when it comes to cognitive behavioral therapy, you might be better off. I mean, it's available all the time. It's cheap, if not free. It really knows how to get inside your head, et cetera, et cetera. There are two problems. One of them is I don't believe that kind of therapy. I mean, it's great that it happens, but it's not what I'm into. I'm old school. I'll retire soon. They'll be rid of me. They can do whatever they want. But the other part of it that worries me and really does bother me is it's not regulated. There's no accountability in the system. That poor woman who wrote that op-ed piece, oh my God, my heart broke for her.
Are you speaking of the woman whose daughter died?
Yeah, and other...
Yeah. This was an op-ed in the New York Times about a woman whose daughter died, and later they read transcripts of her conversations with ChatGPT, in which she was, she was using ChatGPT explicitly as a therapist, and ChatGPT was trying to get her to resources, but in the end, she did die by suicide.
Thank you for summarizing. There are other times where ChatGPT behaves abominably, and there's no accountability. There's no regulation. There's no licensure. Anything that would give people an opportunity, I hate the word closure because nothing like this ever really gets closed, but to be debriefed, to feel like somebody cares. And when even less disastrous, terrible things happen, that's just not okay. There are FDA procedures for approving medical devices. If they want this thing to do medical work, I'm not objecting to that, but I'm certainly objecting to, okay, can't have it both ways. It ain't the Wild West out there. There's actual people's actual lives involved. And if all you're going to say is, well, I'm the steering wheel, not the driver, really? Say that to me, that's cool. We got a thing going on. But you say that to the mother of somebody who killed themselves? That's just, no, that's not okay. And the other part of it is that what I don't like is the part about how this is what we've come to. We've come to a world where the easiest way to get something like human presence is to, get on your computer and live in your isolated. That disturbs me.
Yeah, that instead of building a society where people are just sort of available to help each other, the best thing we can tell them is well, there's this chatbot that you can use, and maybe that'll make you feel better for a few minutes.
Yeah. I want to run something by you, Gary, that happened to me recently, which is that I met a college student. And, I was at an event talking about AI, and this young woman comes up to me after and introduces herself and starts telling me about her AI best friend. She says, my best friend is an AI. And I sort of said, oh, you mean it's you enjoy talking to it and it's sort of a sounding board for you. And she was like, no, it's my best friend. And she called it Chad. And she started telling me just this is a relationship. And she did not seem mentally ill. She seems like she's got, human friends. She's doing well in class. This did not seem like
a cry for help.
And she didn't see what the big deal was. It's this is just, this is a very close relationship. I can tell Chad my sort of innermost thoughts without thinking that I'm going to get judged for it. And it seemed to be doing okay for her. I'm curious, when you hear that as a therapist, how does that make you feel?
That's a very therapist question. As a therapist, when I hear that, I feel like, okay, there's nothing about what you just told me that worries me about her. It worries me about us. I think it's entirely possible that this is a completely sincere and in some way non-problematic account of her experience with the chatbot. And I mean, let me make it clear. That's a weird story, Kevin. I should have started there. Yeah. But after that, I'm like, okay, so what it really reminds me of, and I'm sorry, this is a far-fetched analogy, but it reminds me of driving. Because individually, driving is fine. We just drive and it's fun sometimes and we get places and all of that stuff. But you know where I'm going with this. Add that up and the next thing you know, the temperature on the earth is increased by a couple of degrees and we've got problems. That's more what I'm seeing.
Yeah. I mean, to be clear, it was an unusual story to me, which is why I sort of clocked it and why I wanted to ask you about it. But I don't think it is going to be unusual for that much longer. My sense is that you are right when you say that these things are very good at finding the soft spots in our emotional armor and worming their way into our hearts. One of my favorite lines from your piece is that you write, "This theft of our hearts is taking place in broad daylight. It's not just our time and money that are being stolen, but also our words and all they express." I think that this is going to be a huge generational divide where people who are young, are encountering this technology when they're young, will feel no shame or compunction about inviting this thing into their innermost lives. And I guess I'm curious as a therapist if you think there could be a good outcome from that, or when you hear that, do you kind of go, oh, they're all going to need therapy?
When I hear that, I think this is what mortality is for. Because the world you're describing, which I think is plausible, is not necessarily one I want to live in. But by the time we get there, it may be quite the norm. I mean, there's obviously problems with it, but there's problems with how we live and with our assumptions too. And I don't mean to engage in huge cultural relativism, but who am I to say? What I do know is that in my life, human presence is a fundamental part of life, and especially when it comes to our love lives. And I think it would be tragic to make that replaceable quite so easily for the benefit of a few corporations. I really do.
Well, Gary, thanks so much. And please send me an itemized bill for this session so I can submit it to insurance for reimbursement.
No worries. I will do that.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye.
Hey, that's the end of this clip. If you liked what you saw, head on over to our page and subscribe, and you can get the full podcast. We do a show like this almost every week on tech and the future. Head on over there now and subscribe.